I never believed in ghosts. That is, until the night I found myself alone in the museum. It started as a routine late shift. The museum had been closed for hours, and I was the only one left doing inventory in the dimly lit storage room. The air was still, heavy with the scent of aged wood and dust. The silence should have been comforting, but it wasn't. It felt oppressive, like something unseen was watching me. At first, I shrugged it off. It was just an old building settling, I told myself. But then I heard it, a faint whisper. At least, I thought it was a whisper. It came from the hallway outside the storage room, so soft it could have been the wind. Except there was no wind. The museum's windows were sealed shut, and I was the only one inside. I hesitated before stepping into the corridor, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The grand hall beyond was eerily still, the antique displays casting long, distorted shadows. My footsteps echoed as I moved forward, scanning the exhibits. That's when I saw it. A figure, just a fleeting glimpse, standing near the glass case that held the museum's most infamous artifact, the mourner's mask. It was an ancient ceremonial mask from the 18th century, rumored to have been worn by a grief-stricken widow during forbidden rituals. The legend said she had cursed the mask with her sorrow, binding her spirit to it forever. The figure was gone in an instant, vanishing the moment my light touched it. A trick of the eye, I tried to convince myself, but then the glass case rattled. Just a little, as if something inside had moved. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I took a cautious step closer, my breath fogged in the air. Though the museum wasn't supposed to be that cold, that's when I noticed it. Something was wrong with the reflection in the glass. I could see myself standing there, flashlight in hand. But behind me, there was someone else, a woman, dressed in black, her face obscured by a veil. I spun around, my heart hammering, but there was no one there. Then came the whisper again. Only this time, it was right next to my ear. "Leave." The flashlight flickered. The air grew heavier, pressing down on me like an invisible weight. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. Then, from deep within the museum, something slammed. A door, maybe a display case. The sound echoed through the empty halls, followed by the unmistakable creak of slow, deliberate footsteps. I wasn't alone, and whatever was there, it didn't want me to stay. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, echoing through the empty corridors of the museum. My flashlight flickered again, casting erratic shadows that seemed to stretch and move on their own. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to turn toward the sound. The grand hallway stretched before me, lined with glass cases filled with relics from centuries past. Everything was still. Too still, the air had an unnatural chill, thick with something unseen but undeniably present. I took a hesitant step forward, the old wooden floor creaking beneath my weight. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. One of the mannequins inside a nearby display case, a 19th century funeral exhibit, had shifted. I was sure of it. It was positioned in a mourning stance, its black veil draped over its porcelain face. But now, the veil was slightly lifted, as if something underneath had moved. I told myself it was my imagination. But then the glass case fogged up, as if someone had breathed against it from the inside. I stumbled back, my breath hitching, and then the tapping started. A slow, rhythmic tap, tap, tap against the glass. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The mannequin's head tilted ever so slightly, just enough for me to see a hint of something behind the veil. Something not made of porcelain, something that blinked. I turned and ran. The hall stretched longer than I remembered, my footsteps echoing alongside another set of steps, ones that weren't mine. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, surrounding me as I sprinted past darkened exhibits. I had to get out, had to reach the security office. Then the lights went out. I skidded to a stop, swallowed by pitch darkness. My flashlight was the only source of light, its feeble beam shaking as my hands trembled. The silence was suffocating. Then just behind me, I heard it, breathing. Shallow, raspy, right against my ear. I spun around, my flashlight landing on nothing but an empty hallway, but I knew I wasn't alone. I could feel it. Then, without warning, every single exhibit alarm in the museum went off at once. A deafening cacophony of shrieking sirens and flashing red lights. My pulse raced as I ran toward the security office, my only hope of finding a way out. The walls felt like they were closing in, the artifacts staring at me from behind their glass prisons. Just as I reached the door, I heard one final sound that made my blood run cold. A voice, low and distorted, whispering from the darkness. The voice sent a paralyzing chill through my body. My fingers fumbled with the security office door handle, slick with sweat, as I forced it open and slammed it shut behind me. The alarms outside still blared, red emergency lights flashing in rhythmic bursts, painting the room in eerie, pulsating shadows. I pressed my back against the door, trying to catch my breath, trying to convince myself that I wasn't losing my mind. The security monitors flickered, the grainy black and white feeds struggling to keep a steady signal. I scanned each screen, desperate for a logical explanation. The main hall appeared empty. The exhibits stood motionless. The long corridors stretched in silent emptiness. Then, on one of the screens, something moved. At first, I thought it was just a glitch, a distortion in the old camera feed. But then, the movement became clear. The mourner's mask exhibit, the same one where I had seen the shadowy figure earlier, had changed. The glass case was now open. But that wasn't the worst part. Standing in front of it, facing the camera, was a woman. Draped in a tattered black gown, her veil partially lifted to reveal sunken, hollow eyes staring straight ahead. Straight at me. My stomach twisted in terror. I spun around to grab the phone on the desk, but the moment I touched it, a static charge crackled through my fingers, and the entire security system shut down. The monitors went dark. The alarm stopped. The air became unbearably thick, like the room itself was holding its breath. Then the knocking started. A slow, deliberate knock on the security office door. I stepped back, shaking my head. Number no, this can't be happening. The knocking came again. 3 heavy pounds, as if someone, or something, was demanding to be let in. I didn't move. I barely breathed. But then beneath the door, a shadow seeped in, stretching unnaturally across the floor, reaching for me. I grabbed the flashlight, my only weapon, and shined it towards the shadow. It recoiled, writhing away from the light like a living thing. The knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. And then, from the farthest corner of the room, a whisper crawled through the air. "Turn around." I squeezed my eyes shut, refusing to obey. My breath hitched, my pulse hammering in my ears. Turn around. It was closer now, right behind me. Every instinct in my body screamed run, but I couldn't move, couldn't fight. The air grew impossibly cold, and I felt it. Something reaching toward me, its presence wrapping around my shoulders like a deathly embrace. And then the lights flickered back on. The monitors buzzed to life. The alarms blared once more. The door burst open as two security guards rushed in, their faces twisted in confusion. I stumbled back, gasping for air, my mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. But as I looked at the monitors again, my blood turned to ice. The woman was gone. The mourner's mask was back inside its case. And yet, on the floor, where the shadow had been, something remained. A single black veil. The black veil lay on the cold floor, unmoving, yet filled with a presence that made my skin crawl. The security guards were speaking, their voices muddled, distant, as if I were underwater. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the fabric. It shouldn't have been there. The woman, the thing was gone, yet she had left something behind. Proof that what I had seen wasn't just my imagination. One of the guards, a burly man with tired eyes, nudged my shoulder. "Hey, you all right? What the hell happened here?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. What could I say? That I had seen a ghost? That something had whispered to me from the shadows? That I had felt the cold grip of something not human inside this museum? Instead, I just pointed at the monitors. The other guard frowned and leaned in, rewinding the footage. Static flickered, the screen jumping between frames. At first, it showed the same empty hallways, the lifeless exhibits. But then, there. The video showed me standing in the hallway, staring at the mourner's mask, but the shadow I had seen, it wasn't there. Instead, the cameras showed me talking to nothing, just thin air. I shook my head violently. No, that's not right. She was there. I saw her. The video glitched. For half a second, the black figure appeared behind me, her veil drifting, her hollow eyes locked onto mine. Then the footage cut out. The guards exchanged glances. One of them, a younger man, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened." My breath hitched. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, looking at the other guard as if asking permission. When the older man sighed and nodded, he continued. "There have been reports, strange occurrences, staff seeing figures at night, objects moving on their own. And the mask?" He pointed toward the exhibit. "It doesn't stay where it should." I swallowed hard. "Then why is this place still open?" The older guard snorted. "Because people love a good ghost story. And management? They don't care as long as the tourists keep coming." A heavy silence filled the room. I looked back at the monitor, at the image frozen on screen. Those eyes, they were burned into my mind now, watching me even in the safety of the security room. I needed to get out. Without another word, I grabbed my things and walked out. My legs felt weak, my chest tight with the weight of what I had just experienced. The halls were still, silent, just as they had been hours before. But now I knew I was never really alone here. As I stepped outside, the cold night air filled my lungs, clearing my head for the first time. But just as I reached my car, I noticed something in the reflection of the museum's glass doors. A figure standing inside, watching me, a black veil slowly drifting to the floor. I didn't wait. I got in my car and sped away, leaving the haunted museum and whatever lurked inside behind. But deep down I knew the truth. Some places never let go of their ghosts.